All right, here we go. We are going to draw a what we're calling a torn paper layers drawing. We'll get right into the setup. We're going to take a piece of paper. It's going to be a kind of a fast drawing. That's half the size of a piece of regular computer paper, so we can cut these in half or just use half of that. I'm starting one here. I cut this in half. First thing we're going to do is make a border, and that's about 1/4 of an inch border. You could measure it out if you wanted to, but a little shortcut is using some pencil and just kind of lining it up right over here with your eye and either drawing a line like that or getting it lined up, make a little mark here and a little mark here. Remember, measure twice and then connect those with a ruler. All right, there's your border. Next, we have to make our pre-sketch. This is going to be your pre-sketch that we trace onto some cardstock. And there are a couple of rules that we have to go by. And one of them is that you have to have the border, and then you have to have 3 layers of paper and a background. Here's what that looks like. At first, you don't have to worry about making it look like it was torn paper. And if you want to really draw torn paper, a good thing to do is tear some paper. Look at that edge right there. How kind of irregular it is, maybe a little bit fuzzy, and there's a little bit of that separated paper that got kind of torn and scratchy. That's a good thing to look at as you're thinking about drawing paper that is torn. So we're going to make, again, 1, 2, 3 layers, and part of these layers, see that? I'm not worried about the little tiny bits in my pre-sketch. I'll show you how to do that later. I'm going to ask you to do some overlap. See, this one, I'm just going to let it curve. So that's one layer. That's our first layer. Here they overlap, here they overlap, here it does not. And we can kind of mix and match. Now, what we're also going to do in here is sneak in your initials. Okay? So my initials are DB. So just like we did in Art 1, I'm going to ask you very lightly, you can see that, make your letters wrap around these letters that you put in there in a very simple way, so your letters look, kind of nice. I'm going to make these letters get a little bit thinner and thicker in different areas, and I'm going to add this little feature. You don't have to. It can be very simple block letters. It can be more rounded, bubbly letters. That's okay too. See how I'm going around that first letter that I made on the inside. I'm going to try to make this part skinnier and this part thicker, because I kind of like the way that looks. You see lots of lettering that does that. And again, this is your pre-sketch. You can erase and fix things all you need to. Now, what we're going to do with the initials is this. We're going to connect them to one of these layers, either the first, second, or third layer. That part is up to you. It can be connected on the top and the bottom, a little of both, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to start to make my next layer. And let's let it go behind here. I'm going to let it tuck in behind that letter, let it reappear, and there it tucks in behind it. I'm going to let it reappear, and I'm going to let this time, instead of overlapping, I'm just going to let it curve, and now I'm going to let it connect to the D. Then I'm going to let it overlap right there. What we do to make it connect. So we're going to try to make the appearance that this layer literally did get torn out, and then somebody used scissors very carefully to cut that out. All right, here comes layer 2. And again, look how fast this is. Just kind of semi-wobbly lines. Remember, we have that little piece of torn paper to look at. Okay, to kind of, let that sort of feel happen. Whoops, I forgot. I'm going to make this layer also connect with B. And I think to help unify this, if we let the two letters also connect to each other with a little torn piece right there. So it's going to look like it's connected there. We're going to try to make it look like it is kind of floating, just like you see my little cast shadows right there on the white paper. We're going to try to get that effect. So there's one layer. Here's our second layer. Excuse me. Our third layer is going to go in here. I'm going to let this layer peek through that opening. Looks like I should probably do it again right there. I'm going to let it overlap there. This layer is going to go behind that layer that connects to the D. And I'm going to let this one kind of just wrap around. And this one kind of goes there. So there's layer number 3. So it's almost a good idea to label those on your pre-sketch so you kind of can remember what's what. Then I think of this part as the background. So B, G is that farthest layer way back there. So this, just like any other pre-sketch, we need to darken it. Okay, and I have one kind of pre-made in a very similar way. Just like that. So I've labeled it lightly and I've labeled the background. It's just slightly different than this one I made here. But that's close enough because I'm going to try to make this video not last too long. What we're going to do is take 2 little pieces of blue tape. We're going to put the pre-sketch behind a piece of cardstock, tape it together, hit that light box, and very lightly trace on the cardstock. Trace a little dot at each corner of the border so you can come back later with a ruler and make those nice and straight. Now I have gone ahead with this drawing here so you can kind of get a sense of what it looks like, and here are a few things to think about as we go. Let me get a little closer now. So we're trying to create that sense of overlap, like that kind of thing is happening. Okay, see that little shading underneath, right down in here? That's what we're trying to go for, just to make it, even more so than that. So we're going to use one of our nicer shading pencils and make sure to find something you can use as a cover sheet so you don't smear your hand everywhere. And when you do, when you do the shading, what you do is you take that nice kind of smooth line. Remember, your lines here were kind of just bumpy but kind of smooth. Now here's the trick. When you want to make it look like wrinkled, torn paper, what you do is you take your fingertips and you kind of rotate it and move your hand around like that as you draw a line. So watch how it looks much more kind of naturally kind of bumpy. That's how you get more of that look of torn paper. So if I bring this back, I'll do a little bit of shading right down here. So I'm going to do a little bit of that line, and I'm going to do that exact same thing. I'm going to try to follow my light pre-sketch line, but I'm going to do it as I rotate my hand a little bit. See, that gave that natural little bumpy feel there. Now with all of these, we're going to go, what I suggest is that you do something kind of light to medium right up to your line using our nice little shading rules. And we'll talk about some general things over in for this whole drawing in a moment. But as far as the details go, here's a nice little gradation. Lots of little circles, holding the pencil really far back so I can get that nice little soft gradation. Then I think we should go a little bit darker right up here. Now as I'm shading here, I can make extra little bumps and lumps and things. So I can kind of dig in there and make it look a little bit more like it was torn. What we don't want is just the line itself to remain. Remember, you want to shade just dark enough so that line kind of disappears. When you get to the part where they kind of overlap each other, the one that goes in front should be a little bit lighter right here. See that little relationship? So I'm going to push that little corner a little bit darker. Then I'm going to go a little bit darker right there and let it fade away. Okay, another little detail. I'll just do a little section of it and point it out in a few other areas. Another little detail is where the paper gets kind of ripped apart. So it kind of gets ripped apart like right in here, that little fuzzy area. And many times it's kind of darker than the rest of the paper. So I think you can hold that pencil really far back and just barely give it a little wiggly wiggly. Just kind of an irregular little thing right there. And you can see where I've been doing it in some other places. See that little shading right there? And sometimes it leaves a little light edge for contrast. Sometimes it kind of bumps into the edge. It's not perfectly regular. It's kind of, kind of scratchy and lumpy and bumpy. Now, one thing I have not done, I did all this area, but I have not gone in and did the slightly darker bit right up next to the torn edge and let that nicely kind of fade away. Then there's a little bit right here. I'm going to hold the paper down so this outline is there for just a moment. And that's how you can kind of get that. It's basically dark to light, dark to light. Now, to go around your letters, the first thing I did, and you can see how this one kind of pops up a little bit. The first thing I did is I just did this flat kind of medium tone, just to establish where the contrast is. Then I went in and I thought of a light source. See, my light is kind of coming in from the top and maybe over here a little bit. So I created a little bit of a cast shadow over here and over here. I'm going to put it over here too. So after I did just the basic shading, then I can come in and do a little bit extra, a little bit darker, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a fuzzy edge right there. Give it some like atmosphere, and not to make it too graphic. And since the light's coming here, the shadow is going to be over on the other side. And I will work all the way down to here and make sure this shadow doesn't quite go to the edge of the D right there, because the light's kind of coming in from the side as well. Just dark enough to make it pop out. And I'm going to let the letters be completely blank. And I may make that a little bit darker once I look at the whole thing. I think I will, because that one's a little bit darker. Anyway, so the part that connects to the letters, you can just leave it completely blank right there. I'm going to try this. I haven't tried this yet. I'm going to try to let this tear look like it goes into the letter a little bit. To make it look like it's kind of connected, and I have to go a little bit darker right there next to the letter so I can kind of see where the edge of the letter is. I might have gone a little bit too dark with that. That's a little better. And I might try to do that right here too. So I'm going to just take this line and extend. You don't have to do this. This is really an experiment that I haven't tried yet. And just a little bit of shading right there to kind of make it look like it's connected over here. Or you can just leave it totally like that. Or you could do the same thing in the other direction if you wanted to. All of that is completely optional. So at the edge of all of your tears, I would do that little fuzzy bit. See, I think that's too smooth right there. I'm going to put a couple little notches right there, make it look more torn. Now, when you're doing this little fuzzy bit, you really need to hold that pencil far back. And just almost like a sloppy little shading fuzzy bit. All right, so hopefully you can see where the little highlights are at the edge of the paper. I have not finished all of it. Now, there's another thing to kind of think about as far as the whole thing is concerned. Each layer, I think, should get a little darker. Okay, it'll just help create that sense of depth of things going farther back, and it will help your letters kind of pop right out. Also, since light's coming down from this direction, I think you should have the all of the, if your light's coming down from that direction, all of the shading underneath each layer be a little bit darker to show how the light's coming from that direction. So for my case, all the ones over here, I may make a little bit softer, just to help emphasize where the light's coming from. But that's not a huge issue. But it's something you can think about possibly. All right, so I have not finished this. I'll keep working on it, and I'll at least have it in a slideshow and in class. And that's going to be it for our little warm-up drawing for the advanced art class. All right, and I'll help you more in class. Take it easy. See you soon.